Hello! Today we're gonna do this. Yeah, I've reworked the AI of the enemy, I have done all the extra animations, and I have also... Whoops! I've also updated the model and added some extra features. Let's get into it. We've come a long way since our last meeting. We had this enemy that roamed around randomly and not much else. To reach our goal, there are many things to work on. The AI, the animation, the dismembering system, but let's start from the basics. The first thing I've done was give it a visit to the beautician, to make it a little scarier. My friend's advices helped a lot. The biggest change is that now this guy is way more broken. These dangling cables are realized by a shader displacement system. This way they will always point down no matter the angle of the body, and without using any kind of physics or any skinning and animations. Once I upgraded the aesthetic, it was time to also upgrade the animations. The first thing I've done was adding this blend space that changes the pose of the enemy when it turns around. This way it rotates more naturally. Then I accelerated the enemy slightly every time the hand touches the ground. This way it seems that it's more dragging itself on the ground and less just sliding. And lastly, I made it so the hand collides properly with the environment. This way it feels more grounded, more connected to the environment. Let's now break this connection. So, dismemberment. In the case of this enemy, dismemberment isn't only a quote from that space, but it's also a gameplay mechanic and a way to add variety to the enemies. On one end, I will be able to add different kind of enemies with different conditions. One enemy with a broken leg, one enemy with a broken head, and so forth. On the other end, the player will be able to choose where to damage the enemy and obtain different effects this way. Initially, I thought I would be able to achieve this vision by using a technology inside Unreal Engine designed to add clothes to modular characters. So I modeled 4 unique meshes, one for the head, one for the torso, and 2 for the arms, and then broken version of these, and I thought I could just swap the skeletal meshes of the arms with their broken version whenever the player damaged them enough. This was such a bad idea. The system is designed to be very lightweight when it comes to transferring animations from a base mesh to all the children meshes, the clothes basically. So this part of the system was working very nicely. However, there were still 5 draw calls for every enemy. A draw call is basically a command that tells the GPU to draw something. So for every enemy, the GPU was basically drawing 5 enemies, and when I tried to stress test the system by adding 20 enemies in the scene tanked. So in the end the solution was to have a single mesh. It contained both the broken version and the normal version of every piece, and then I swapped between one and the other with the opacity channel, drawn by a mask that I realized by vertex color, so no extra texture, no nothing, and this way the system worked very nicely, and with 20 enemies we still had 120 FPS. Once I also did all the logic for the movement and the collisions, which was a huge pain. I had to do all the physics asset for every possible version of the dismemberment state, otherwise I kept hitting the missing bones. Yeah, it was a thing. But as I was saying, once I've done all that, I then randomized the initial state of the enemy and I spawned around 20 in the scene. They are horrible, they look like cockroaches, which I think is a good thing. Once I've done all that, I started doing animation non-stop. Animation for every possible kind of attack that this enemy does, and every possible dismemberment state. Then I've decided that I was being too kind to the enemy, and so I also started doing every possible damage and heart animation. This way I will have a nice feedback every when I dismember a creature. Once this passage is also done, the last thing to do is unify all the work done, creating an AI that tells the enemy how to behave. As I stated previously, I don't want combat to be the sole focus of the game. I want it to be an important component, but also a serious choice with serious consequences. For example, you may use the few ammos that you have left, and you may also draw attention from enemies all around the base that are attracted to all the fuss you're making. These creatures should be a terrifying foe, not just a mobile target, so the player should want to avoid combat for a variety of reasons. Therefore, the best approach is to create some kind of simple stealth AI that facilitates this kind of gameplay. When it comes to AI, Unreal Engine usually uses a thing called behavior tree. It's basically a tree of tasks that gets executed in order, and sometimes the system chooses when to execute a task or another. This system is very popular, and even I used it for my previous project, but let's consider for a bit this specific AI that we want to create. The AI will start in idle, moving around the map aimlessly. When it sees an enemy, it starts investigating, and if the visual contact continues, then it will start chasing the player, and once it gets closer, it will attack. If the player manages to run away, then the AI will start chasing it and investigating the last seen spot, and if it doesn't see them for a while, it will go back to idle. So basically my AI will have a series of conditions, a series of behavior sets, a series of states. Let's talk state machines then. Finite state machines are another way of dealing with artificial intelligence. It's a system that's designed for handling different states of the AI and the possibility of switching between one state and another one based on the condition. Unreal Engine has finite state machines, but they are only for animation. Therefore, I decided to write my own state machine directly inside of Blueprints. I've got 4 states: idling, suspect, chasing, and combat. And I've got the possibility of switching between one state and another based on the awareness level of the enemy and on the previous state. After a big bit, admittedly, of debugging, the system seems to be working nicely. Also, I decided to create a level design tool that allows me to specify some area as a corridor. This way, if the enemy loses me when I'm inside a corridor, it won't just search around my last known position, but it will run all across the corridor. I hope that this makes them feel more like intelligent foes, and it will also give the player the chance to enact that famous chase scene where the protagonist hides on the side of a corridor and the antagonist keeps running along the corridor chasing him. The last thing I decided to do is to give the enemy the possibility of faking his own death. Sometimes you will shoot the enemy and believe that you have won, and then, whoops, the enemy gets back up and starts attacking you. Right now, when the enemy fakes his own death, it then gets up 10 seconds after. But I would like to render this more varied. Maybe it will get up after 5 or 10 seconds. Maybe after 2 or 5 minutes. Or maybe it will never get up unless you get really close, and then it will attack. That said, for now, I'm satisfied. There are still missing things other than the fake death variation. For example, we still miss the hearing system from the AI, that now can only see the player with their eyes or if the player damages them. And we also miss the ability for the enemy to actually hurt the player. Right now it performs an attack animation, but we have no health system for the player. But I've got enough AI for now. I can't stand working on it anymore, so I'm gonna stop for now. Thank you very much for watching. This was a hard one to do. I've done a lot of things since the last 2 weeks. I hope to see you in the next devlog, and please remember to leave a like and subscribe. There are still big things to come